Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering Raybearer, chapters 8 and 9, wrapping up part 1. In these chapters, Tarisai winds up in a situation where she is about to be anointed, and she decides that she is going to burn her own memories away. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Rashawn.
All right, lady. Lay it on me. You know what to do.
These 2 chapters were so good.
Mm-hmm.
Also, why can't I just burn out the memories I don't want anymore? Like, what is this gift and how do I get it? I was so jealous.
Yeah.
She's just like, give me 2 minutes, and just puts her head down, walks through her own little mind palace. Shout out to Sherlock.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I don't need this. I don't need that. Fuck this. Get rid of that bullshit.
Yep.
And I was like, God damn.
Yeah. Yeah. This is, this reminds me, I know I've already said tonight even that you need to read Ninth House, and I stand by that. But there is a spot in that, mild spoilers, where someone is injured and they're asking if there's a way to heal them, and the person is like, not exactly, but I can reverse time on your body by 24 hours so that you are in the state you were before this thing happened. And she is thinking to herself, how far back can you go? Can you make it so that I have never been hurt in any way? Can you take away all of that from me? And just the concept of being able to like completely remove trauma in that sense, physical or mental in this case. I mean, it would be nice. It's one of those things where I know, like, if we're talking about the purest form of, well, that's part of what made you who you are, and maybe you would be a different person if you burn those men. Maybe I would be a better person. Maybe I'd be a happier person. I'm willing to take the risk.
There's a technique or a treatment. I think I always get the letters confused. I think it's EDMR, but it might be MRD. But basically what it does is, and this is like a real cheap explanation, it's a way of dealing with trauma. And what you do is you sort of fixate on a very specific sort of safe memory, right? A memory that you have where you feel like really protected, safe, whole, all the good stuff. And then you start to pinpoint memories of trauma. And then it's so weird. It has to do with eye movement, right? So the provider you've heard of this, right?
I've heard of this from a show I covered where they were doing this to deal with PTSD, and it was like light that was moving.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I had a therapist that did this. This is a couple years ago now. Several years ago at this point, but it's really, really wild because what it does is it desensitizes you from the hurt, sort of like the intensity of the traumatic memory, right? It removes you from it and helps you reprocess it so that when you're triggered, you don't have the same sort of, intense reaction to either the trigger or the memory. And so when you're doing it, it sounds like nonsense and sorcery and just bullshit, right?
Sorcery.
But it is so wild because it works.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I wish I could go back and do it again, but my current provider doesn't do it. But it is sort of like what she is describing here, where you pick like specific memories and you don't like burn them away to nothing, but you sort of burn away the power they have over you.
Right.
It's really wild.
Huh. That is
Patrick is in the chat talking about it. Yeah.
Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. Dope.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really, really, and like when she talked to me about it, I was like, that sounds like bullshit, but like, whatever, we'll just try it. And it worked so well that like I can think about very specific things,
mm-hmm.
and I can remember that they happened, remember what it was like, but I won't have that feeling,
that
like,
visceral sort of response. Yeah. Fascinating. Huh.
Yeah, it really is. Like what Dresden did with the Shag Nasty.
Right. I wonder if that's something that you could recreate with like those VDR headsets. You know, if there's like phone apps now that imitate that sort of light movement that you can like kind of self-treat with it. You know, I'm sure it's not ideal, but if you haven't got the other options.
Right, true. Yeah, I think you probably really benefit from having somebody lead you through it. Yeah. But to your point, if we get to a place where the technology is out there that we can do it to ourselves.
Yeah. Well, all right. Let's begin chapter 8. The last chapter ended with, "You might bear a Raybearer. He winked at me. The Empire would be forever in your debt." Chapter 8 starts, "Before I could respond, my chest began to burn."
Mine too.
Someone had heaped coals over my heart. The heat came from inside, a dragon, a demon throbbing to get out. I gasped, clutching at my heart and sweating, glancing around and hoping no one noticed.
Yeah. And we find out this has been happening.
Yeah. This is a real weird thing. What do you think is going on here?
This sort of like, it felt like, at least this very specific bit, this person, the priest who says it in the end of the last chapter, is so like right bullseye onto what the lady has been sort of like fighting against, right? It feels like that sentiment that, oh, you could bear one, right, is hitting really, really close to home in a way that our girl doesn't understand, but the lady probably does.
Interesting. Okay.
I had thought before that the lady maybe could have been a Raybearer herself, but because of the constraints of this sort of patriarchal society, she wasn't allowed to, and that's maybe where she was coming from. But this reaction here, I was like, well, maybe it wasn't that she was going to be a Raybearer. Maybe she gave birth to a Raybearer. Like, maybe that's where the story is going.
I see what you're
like,
saying.
I still don't know. But this reaction to being told, oh, no. You're not ever going to be a Raybearer, but maybe you'll get knocked up and you can have one. And won't that be
you're
grand,
never going to be that important, but you may squeeze out somebody that important, and then we'll be real glad you did that and pat you on the head and send you away with a cup of apple juice.
A cup of apple juice and some Jell-O. But so for whatever it turns out to be, this reaction that she's having, this burning in her chest, it feels like it is the lady's reaction to the same sort of sentiment that's just sort of built into Terry, or Tar, as the boys are calling her.
Yes. So you feel that Tarisai, even though, you know, we know that her function with memories has been, she can touch people and get their memories. She can touch objects and pull memories out of them. But you think that when her mother's like, her mother's nickname for her is Maid of Me. And you think that there are memories like in Tarisai herself that are her mother's memories that are triggered in her, and she doesn't understand that that's what's happening.
That's my take on it so far.
Okay.
Because this line, and it comes up later in chapter 9 too, with the burning of everything and the sort of separating, it seems like that she's trying to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am not 100% sure because the lady is very clear that the Tarisai is of her.
Right.
Like, almost like you're not even a real thing. You don't even exist outside of the function I need you to fulfill, which is
Very
my
much
wish
so.
fulfilled. Literally my wish fulfillment, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't, as a reader, I'm not sure how much of that to take at face value. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very
like,
much.
Because the lady is saying it so. At first, I was like, well, that must be what it is. But now I'm like, well, just because she says it so doesn't necessarily mean that is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But for right now, it does feel like Tarisai is so like, she's had all this other stuff dumped into her.
Right.
This, and I'm not sure how much is really her and how much is the lady.
Fair.
So
okay.
when I'm reading this, it feels like, because why would Tarisai have a reason to react so strongly to this sort of like this attitude of this priest? You could just squeeze one out. Wouldn't that be great for you? So I feel like it's got to be some sort of residual from the lady.
Okay.
But she is not here for it. I loved it so much.
Yeah.
How unsatisfying that answer was. Oh, maybe you'll just gonna have one. Like, how deeply not here for that she was.
Very much. And this reaction, it's wild because she actually goes and pours ice on her chest. So when you read it was like there were coals heaped on my heart. It sounds like a metaphorical pain. Yeah. But then we find out this is like a very literal, I need to cool off with literal cooling agents kind of pain.
Yep. And she tells us that not only has it been happening since she's been in the Children's Palace a couple of years now, but that it happened when she was at home and she would have what she calls like tantrums.
Right.
And we don't get like a lot of detail, but we know that this sensation of this heat in her chest started when she was much younger, when she was back at the house. I forget what the house is called.
Bikini House.
That was like her safe place. It was hidden. Why would she be having this reaction in a place that was like safe and hidden and there were no threats? Mm-hmm. And yet she was still having this sensation happen when she was deeply upset about something. Doesn't tell us what the tantrums were, just that she was, quote, prone to tantrums.
Yeah. And sometimes I woke from dreams I didn't understand, from memories that seeped from the children's palace floor with the ghosts of girls who had features eerily similar to my own. And she is thinking that this has to do with the lady, but she has no idea. Like, it's been going on for a while. It's getting more frequent now. And there's nothing to go on, really.
Yeah, yeah.
And Kira shows up and is aware that she's having these attacks, but of course nobody is familiar with her problem specifically.
Right.
So Kira's like, well, we need to get some medics. And there's an interesting thing here where Tarisai is like, there's nothing they can do. The last thing I needed were palace physicians poking around in my half-Eru insides. And I was like, oh man, I wonder if her insides really are different. Like, like, I wonder if they like did tests on her, would it show?
I was really concerned for her in chapter 9 because I had forgotten, that she had this thing where like she doesn't really get hurt when they tell us very early in the book when she's a little girl, like she can jump off shit and get burned and like, it doesn't really have any impact on her. So when she saves Deo from the fire, I was like, oh, girl, they're going to want to see what's up with you.
Mm.
They're going to want to know how you were able to pull that off. I was so scared for her. But my only consolation is that she ends up accepting the anointing. So I'm like, well, maybe that makes her off limits. And so they won't be like poking and prodding, trying to see like what her deal is. I was so scared for her. I was like, oh, no, no, you can't let all those people know you can walk through fire. No, don't do it. I mean, I'm glad she saved them, but inside I was like, no, girl,
right,
don't do
it.
Don't
Don't blow up your own spot for it. So let's see. No place made me feel more distant from Dio than the children's palace throne room. I stood invisible among the other candidates in the chamber of mirrored ceiling tiles and wax-dyed tapestry. And Dio, he has basically like a mini court where the kids come to him with problems and he has to figure out how to approach them and best solve them.
And this is all preparation for when he is eventually emperor. And he gets this case. One of these kids is just like, you keep putting us in a group project.
Basically, yeah. With the dumb kids from this dumb country who are all dumb-dumbs.
Right? And Deo is a little like, what's the word? Unprepared to handle this. Right? I love, too, the way it's written, because once the one kid from the, I don't know, Jabati clan?
Jabanti.
Accuses these other kids of being slow, then like it's like a ruckus.
Yeah.
People are yelling back and forth, and Deo is up there trying to like keep the peace and be in control. And Tarisai is watching all of this. Her brain is so fast. She's so smart. She's like, she's watching, she's listening, and she puts it together. Oh, what it is these particular kids, because it had been mentioned earlier in the chapter too about where all the pallets were, and so some kids are so far away they barely get breakfast. So she puts it all together. Oh, these kids, because of their names, they're all way at the back. They got to run for breakfast. They're on an empty stomach. You know, this is why they're slow. But then she doesn't speak up.
Yeah.
Because she starts to think, she starts to second guess herself. She's like, well, maybe the monster in me is making me think that he's not smart enough. And that's part of the plan. And if I like correct him, that'll move me closer to killing him, which is what I don't want to do.
Create some sort of contempt where I think he deserves to die. Yeah.
So she decides to just like swallow it down, and he has his ruling, which is not the best.
Not great.
Ruling.
Yeah.
It's not great.
It's not
a great showing for it. Listen, I think that this little kid is a cinnamon roll. And maybe he grows up to be terrible, but I just love him right now. He's so cute and so young and so sweet. And he is doing his very best, like you said. And what is his solution?
To give them extra tutoring in the subjects that they're failing at. Which, like...
Because...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because as she's putting the pieces together, the group that's failing, they're like doing really well in like statecraft and like weaponry and something else. But then like logic and puzzles, they're lagging. And she's like, well, that doesn't make sense, because if they're so good at this, at statecraft especially, that shows like intelligence and able to like discern. It shows discernment and being able to, you know, take in all the information and come out to the right conclusion. And Deo was just like, we're just going to get them some tutoring, some SAT prep. It's going to be fine.
And I love this because it's like clearly the writer doing a metaphor for like, you know, school breakfast and lunch programs and stuff, and the way that has been shown very materially to impact performance in classrooms, in testing. That was part of what the Black Panthers were trying to work on, but God fucking forbid.
But they were super scary because they had leather coats and guns, and that was all you had to know about them, right?
Honestly, it's just the leather coats. You don't even have to give them the guns, and it's terrifying already.
It was the leather coats, and they didn't have straight hair. Like they weren't like they were wearing their hair out and natural, and it wasn't straightened, and that was all it took.
Mm-hmm.
I love Deo later on being like, bitch, I knew I could see your face. You knew I was wrong. Why didn't you say something?
I love this so much. He is not like, I saw you. You were going to countermand me in front of everyone.
Nope.
He's like, why didn't you say anything? And she's like, well, this is all for you to take care of. And he's like, I sucked at this. Did you not see me fucking sucking?
It was, you just left me up there sucking. You could have helped me. It was so unexpected, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I was, and maybe I shouldn't have been so surprised because like he is just like delightful so far. But I really was like, okay, because also it shows that he is paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they are not at this point anyway connected by the ray yet, and yet he still knew that she knew. And
and she had said like, oh, I'm in there and I'm not connected to him and I'm invisible in a sea of people. And I'm like, I guess not, girl, because he zeroed in on your whole face and saw everything that was happening. He said something about how like you were scowling at the air the way you do when you're like trying to solve a logic
when you're
puzzle.
trying to exactly. He's like, yeah, I know you. I've been watching you. We've been in this for like 4 or 5 years now. Like I know you.
Mm-hmm.
And she either doesn't think she can be known or doesn't think she's worth being known or doesn't like really understand that people are checking for her, that they value her, because she seems really surprised that he was paying attention to her.
Yeah.
In that moment. And he was just like, why wouldn't I be paying attention to you? I told you on day one.
Yeah.
That you were going to be one of the ones I like. Like I told you that. Mm-hmm. Why are you having trouble believing me?
Yeah, I think almost there's a part of her that's in denial because she's trying to make herself not noticeable. And she's just like, well, of course he's not noticing me because I'm flawless at making myself not noticeable. And then he's like, actually,
you are not nearly as good at that as you think you are. You're really good at a lot of things, but that's not one of them.
Oh, and it should be mentioned, like throughout all of this, she's looking around trying to see Sanjeet, and he isn't around during any of this. She doesn't wind up seeing him until way later in the evening.
And we get just some we find out why he's been like missing, and it is heartbreaking. But before we get to that, there is a she finds, I don't want to jump ahead, but there's a bit where she finds Deo at like his little windowsill.
Right.
And he has his they call it the mask.
Yeah, the lion mask.
But it's the sort of like the, what's the word? The medallion? The
pendant?
The pendant that they wear, right? Mm-hmm. And we had been told about the significance of it before. We understand that this is, we find out now that as he anoints his council, the little like stripes or whatever appear. Right. And so he's got a couple because he's anointed a couple of people at this point. He's got like 3, I think. Like Kira's one. I don't know who the other ones are, but I feel like he's got like 3 or 4 people that are anointed at this point.
But I think it's more than that because I think she says that there's only 3 remaining.
There's 3 left. Yeah. You're right. There's like gluttony, burning, and contagion are the 3 that are left. And
which somebody in the Discord rightfully was like, gluttony? What does that mean? What does that mean as a form of death? And I'm also kind of like,
funny.
Yeah.
You know, that's an interesting point too, because I think gluttony is understood to be almost exclusively about food, right?
Usually.
Like overindulging. But I guess you could make an argument that it could just be overindulging in anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be food.
Right. And that's kind of how I want to read it. I'm just not positive that's the way it's intended. You know, because one could talk about like drugs and alcohol as gluttony, and
that's what I was thinking.
But
women, sex, you know, I said women, but really I just meant sex. Yeah, the way it's written, it does feel like it's just sort of like the very like base meaning of the word, right? We start talking about like the fucking 7 sins. What are they?
Right.
The 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, gluttony is one of them.
It is.
Well, it makes me think of, there was a guy on Complete Guide to Everything who he was doing the keto diet and he wound up getting gout, which is apparently like a real risk with that diet. And he has said since, because that was like years ago, that it was the most painful thing he's ever experienced. He's like, I've broken bones and I would do that 10 times over than get gout again.
Gout is no joke.
Yeah.
I haven't had it. I've known people who had it. It sounds horrible.
And he's like not a heavy dude. He just was trying to like lose a little bit of weight, but he's not somebody who has like 50 pounds plus to lose.
Yeah.
And he had gout.
I think, gout's weird because I forget exactly what the deal is, but it has more to do with like the quality of your diet and not like how much you eat.
The kinds of proteins you're consuming, because it's basically like, what if kidney stones, but in all of your blood? And no, thank you.
Like people get it in like their toes a lot. Like they get it in their
legs
their toes,
and
sometimes,
and
then like sometimes your fingers. But Austin said that's a Game of Thrones disease.
Yeah, it's something that doesn't tend to happen that much anymore because we know more about nutrition, and usually it was called the rich man's disease because you have to have a lot of meat and dairy. You have to have those types of proteins, and poorer people didn't have a lot of that in their diet.
Yeah.
So rich people were the ones who got it. But yeah, the keto thing is heavy on those types of foods.
Yeah.
And thus... This is why keto is garbage and stupid and don't do it.
There's the episode of King in the Hill where Bobby Hill gets gout.
Oh God!
Because he discovers.
I gotta watch that show.
It's really actually well worth watching and holds up surprisingly.
I've heard that, yeah.
But he gets gout because he discovers a Jewish deli in his little Texas town, and he can't help. He eats it like 3 times a day. So he's eating all like this salt fish and like heavily preserved, like, you know, herring and shit like that. And he ends up getting gout. And then he ends up, because he gets it in his big toe, so then he gets like a scooter because he can't walk. And I think his dad is like, yes! Yep. His dad is like, well, you're going to stop eating there. And he's like, no, absolutely not. I want to do such thing.
Oh, man.
Anyway, but yeah, highly recommend King of the Hill. It's on Hulu. 13 seasons. Blow right through.
Damn, 13? Excellent. I didn't know it was on that long.
Bitch, I didn't know it was on that long, so I did a rewatch. I kept thinking like 5 or 6 seasons I'd be done, and she just kept going and going and going.
Nice. All right. Queuing it up.
But yeah, it's all right. So,
but we have to back up a little bit and talk about her talking to Kira about being spoiled. And this is about privilege. The word she's using is spoiled. But, you know, that's clearly what's happening here because she's explaining that, like, I love it. She's talking about how these kids are spoiled because they've never had to, like, milk goats or farm or anything. And Tarisai tries to challenge her by being like, well, do you think I'm spoiled? And she's like, yeah, I do.
But then she says, oh, but you know what? You didn't have any family and you didn't have anybody like sing you lullabies or tell you they loved you or give you anything. So maybe it's a different kind of spoiled.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the thing that a lot of people don't understand about the concept of privilege. It does not mean that you don't have any problems. It just means that your problems come from a different place than the problems other people have. Not a better place or a worse place. It is simply a different place.
Yeah. And if we all had the sort of self-awareness that Kira displays in this moment, we all occupy spaces of privilege and also disadvantaged
Yep.
at the same time. Almost all of us.
Yep.
There's a very, very, very small select piece of the population that only exists in one space.
Yep.
You know, there's an illusion that it's everybody, but really it's just a very small little sliver.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of us occupy both at the same time.
Yep.
You know, like I have all kinds of privilege that I might not recognize until I do the work to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have cis privilege.
Mm-hmm.
I have a presumed heterosexual privilege.
Mm-hmm.
I have presumed Christian privilege.
Mm.
And just in a sense that I don't walk around with anything that says to the
That
world I'm
denotes
not Christian.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
I'm not veiled in any way. I don't wear any particular type of garb that says, oh, she's not Christian. So even though I'm not Christian, no one is looking at me and knowing that and then
Mhm.
treating me accordingly. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that we are
Able-bodied.
Able-bodied. Well,
Yeah, asterisk.
asterisk. You know, but yeah, like, you know, I present as being neurotypical. I'm not, but I don't have anything again that is like a billboard flashing that
Mhm.
says, you know, that I am not, you know. And we're such babies about
Oh
it.
my God. Such babies.
You know, and then you have this little like preteen girl in this book who's just like getting it real time, just getting it. And you're just like, what the fuck is wrong with us?
This is what kills me is like when you say we're such babies about it, that's the exact correct way to put it. And yet the people who don't want to believe in privilege believe that by pointing it out, we're being babies. And it's like, we're just acknowledging the reality of the world. But for some reason, it's seen as like, as inventing things.
Yep.
It's the same thing as like, oh, well, we don't want to like teach actual history because we don't want. Really? Why not? What's the reason? Why though? Huh?
Like, I like the
It's
thing
almost
where
like
they
you're a
just
snowflake.
like they're like not teaching AP African American Studies in like Florida anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it's too hard for the white people, I guess, to learn about. You know, I just.
Do you see? I think it was Austin shared a meme today in the off-topic group that was a man outside of school holding open his trench coat with history books inside, like, kids, hey, come over here.
Yep.
He's got the good stuff.
I just
AKA the very bad stuff.
I don't know what we're doing. I mean, actually, I do know what we're doing. I know exactly what the fuck we're doing and why we're doing it. But goddamn,
we're doing that same old shit that's always been done is what we're doing.
It's fucking I shared a meme like something like how are you failing, like how are you in the wrong side of history when history is literally repeating itself right now?
Literally.
Like you're failing an open book test.
Yes. I had this thing come up recently. It was such a weird, like a little rabbit hole I went down, but I shared about a judge in my district who got nominated for like person of the year, who had like several DWIs and was just wrapped up in a lot of corruption scandals and whatnot. And thankfully, when you click like the shares from that nomination photo, it's only people going, is this a fucking joke? Like not a single soul was on his side. But it led me to finding out more about him. And one of the things that people were talking about was his opposition to putting up a plaque to memorialize a spot where a man was lynched in downtown Sherman. And you have seen the fucking Confederate monument that is by the town hall in Sherman. But this other thing is considered too controversial. And he's been blocking it for like 4 years. And it's like, but there's a literal monument to the Confederacy. And that's fine.
But you can't get no little acknowledgement
that a man
Yeah.
was killed, and they burned. This was like, it led to a riot that burned down all of the black business district in Sherman, which remains to this day like a dead zone of open lots. There's nothing there. It's literally a parking lot.
The number of, and I don't want to, like, I know we got to get back to the book, but the number of black communities that were burned to the ground in this country, if you start digging into it, you will never get done.
I had no idea.
It happened all across this country. It happened everywhere. And whenever people start to talk about, well, how come black people don't do this? And how come their neighborhoods look like that? And why don't they have any generational wealth? And da-da-da-da-da. We tried that.
Mm-hmm.
Slavery ended. We were free. There was Reconstruction. We said, oh, all right, let's try to be people.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have our neighborhoods. We'll have our businesses. And white people said, nah, we don't like it. And burned all of our shit to the ground. From sea to shining sea. Burned it all to the ground. And then turned around and said to us with a straight face, what's wrong with y'all?
Mm-hmm.
Why y'all so poor? Why y'all so poor living in the ghetto?
And
what's
you know why
y'all?
people are saying this? Because they don't know, because we don't teach that history. That's what happens if you don't teach it, is that nobody knows, so that they can keep on blaming the victim. It's all a really nice, tidy little package. And the
country
thing,
knows
like,
what it's doing.
Oh, 100%. And like, there was an article shared a few years ago about a black man who was like elected to the Congress or Senate. I had no idea that a black man was elected that early on. And let me tell you, that shit did not work out. It sure didn't. And it didn't for a long time after either.
Black people in politics, in Congress, and in the Senate in the late 1800s, right after the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Like, black people ran for office, not everywhere, but a lot of places, especially in the South, and won. Once, I didn't know that black people were governors, senators, congressmen, and fucking white people said, hold up.
They were like, oh, wait, we forgot to restrict voting rights and stuff. Shit, we got to do that.
Yep. Got to get back on that. One of the only successful coups in this country was in North Carolina, where the white people dragged the governor of North Carolina out of the mansion, dragged him like a fucking cat, dragged him because too many black people had won political office. And Louisiana briefly had a black governor in the 1860s. Also knows.
Yeah, he said another black governor wouldn't be elected in the U.S. till the 90s. Yep. And this is what I mean. Like, we think that, it's been like a slow, steady progression. No, there was a bump, and then we quashed it. Like, actively made sure,
all the stuff that we generally consider now as being like regressive, and we think about like Confederacy fetishes and like the fucking whatever that Confederate flag is called, the bars and whatever the fuck. Things like
bars
Stone Mountain in
butts.
Georgia. Like, people think that all that happened. Whatever. All that happened organically. It didn't.
Mm-hmm.
All of that shit was a direct, calculated response to the gains that black people were making post the Civil War. Like, white people were like, oh, wait, no. We have to actively come up with some shit.
Yep.
All
that's why saying, I can't wait till these people die out. That won't.
Doesn't work.
That's not how that goes.
Nope. All of the monuments and shit that are all around this country that are like, monuments to the Confederacy, that shit didn't happen for like 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
That shit didn't pop up at the end of the Civil War. It came up much, much later. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
Yeah, the stuff that's in our downtown was in the 30s, I think. Like, it was put up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, sorry everybody, way off track. Well, not actually that off track. It's
not fine. Really. It's not that off track.
And they get interrupted because at this point we have this interesting thing. Empress Ayatoro is somebody that Tarisai is asking about. Her name was Old Erit, and I faintly remembered what it meant. Peace from shore to shore. Ayatora ruled Aritsar for decades. She's the reason women can join the Imperial Guard. She founded the Imperial College, abolished inter-realm slave trade, and Kira interrupts and is like, Dio's wondering where we are. But when we talk to Kira later, she is very much like buying the patriarchy. That Empress Ayatoro is a fluke. She doesn't matter. They didn't paint her because she doesn't really count.
She only was ruling because there were no male heirs. You know, like she just doesn't even count. Yeah, which I was bummed. I was a little bummed, and I'm curious. I don't know, and this probably is something for me to keep an eye on, because Kira is anointed at this point, right? So she's got the connection, and I really wonder, like, if we had had a conversation about this with Kira before she was anointed, would her take be the same, or is she influenced now because she's part of the council? Like, I don't know.
I think it would have been the same.
Yeah,
I don't think this is coming from the palace so much as it is coming from Kira being somebody who accepts what adults tell her. Do you know what I mean?
That's a good read on her, though, because when we talk to Kira a little bit later, and she admits that she's having nightmares because she dreams of her mother, except that now she's not like the same like little good girl who just parrots everything, and her mother is like, what happened to my little girl? Like, you know,
she says, who is this sneering girl? And I'm like, I have a feeling she did not nearly sneer when she said anything, but okay. But yeah, because like I have been this person for a lot of my life. I accepted what authority figures told me, and I did what I was told, and I was aghast at those who did not. And still, to a great degree, do that when I'm like, did you not read the sign? You can't leave that there. And I'm just like disgusted. You know what I mean? That sort of thing.
Like the fucking little hall monitor.
100%. I am Liz Lemon on 30 Rock, who is like, you can't just make a second line and buys all the hot dogs. That is me. She gives an example to Jack at one point about how, like, I have a bag full of batteries in my house because you're not supposed to throw them away. I was like, yes, I have that same bag. I carted that shit all the way to Best Buy. It turns out they don't recycle batteries anymore. And I was like, what do I do with this? And they just shrugged. And I just schlepped them back to my car like a fucking chump. Still haven't thrown them away.
The other part of Liz Lemon, where she's at the convenience store and the clerk is like, I can't break this $100 bill. And she gets, I've had that argument. This is legal currency.
You have to accept it.
And you have to take it. And if you can't break it, then I get that shit for free because I had the money to pay for it and you didn't want to take it. I've also yelled at merchants when they do like that $5 minimum credit card.
Right.
That is not illegal. That's not legal. You're not allowed to do that.
It's a price of doing business that you're going to be paying some fees, my friend. If you don't want to take credit cards, then that's your business. But you can't have a minimum.
You really can't. It's not illegal, but it's against the rules of the credit card merchant. You know, I'm going to call MasterCard and report you, which doesn't really do anything.
It doesn't work. They don't give a shit. They're like, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you're going to stay on hold MasterCard for 45 minutes and then argue with them and get the address. Definitely going to happen.
I do have the number for it though from work. I'll print out all the terms and conditions for you as a merchant, and I can highlight the part that says you're not allowed to do that.
I want you now to like be just sort of like a fighter for the people and walk in these places with like a clipboard and just like note on it about it as if you're in an official capacity here and just put the scare in them. Yeah.
Right. They always have a little sign up, a little handwritten sign.
Exactly.
Sign.
Can I have you sign this here, please? No, it's not important. I just need your signature. Please don't read it. Anyway.
I do need a hobby. Oh, hey, Luis made it.
Luis,
hey, dear.
Hi. So yeah, this is when she's talking about, I love this. When I left home, I believed no place would ever be quite as beautiful, quite as right as the Placide Valley. I remember. I grinned, imitating Kira at age 12. Mama says the Placide Valley sky was woven by the pelican itself, a tapestry with no snags floating over honey-colored mountains. And yeah, the question she's asking, why don't Placides ever let women lead the caravans? They do just as much work as the men. Why do Placides wash their hands after trading with other realms? Those people are no dirtier than we are. Just very simple, direct questions. And it's always very telling when you ask a question and somebody instead laments that you ask it instead of answering it. I don't care what context you put that rule. If that's how a person reacts, they are hiding something from you. The one I always think of is like, are you cheating on me? I can't believe you'd even ask me that.
Instead of fucking just answering, no.
Yep, they're cheating on you 100%. Did you kill him? You think I'd be capable? They killed them. They killed them for sure.
You don't know me at all. Or maybe we do.
Maybe we do. Or maybe we know we don't know you at all. And that's the issue here at hand.
So then it goes to it's bedtime, and we find out that Tarisai is giving
a streaming
service. Basically, right? She's fucking Netflix. Everybody's got requests and shit. So even though she's not anointed, and she's supposed to sleep way on a pallet, way down yonder, because of her ability, she goes up to all the candidates and gives them all a little like something to have a pleasant night. There's one girl who we just met, and I don't know how to say her name. I'm going to call her Maya, but it's like Maya Zatil.
I think that's correct.
And she's like, I want something steamy, bitch.
I love her so much for this.
I want to watch Bridgerton tonight when I go to sleep.
I love it.
So she has a very specific request. She wants like a hot dude to give her something to like enjoy overnight, and Tarisai is able to do that. And
I really appreciate
like, go to sleep, Maya.
I just want to mention that the fact that Ifueko included sexual desire in young characters like this, and it's not just like a very chaste sort of crush thing about a specific person. It's a generalized like, I'd like to get it in though.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that.
She even says to Tarisai that you're gonna have to be less of a prude if you're gonna like be one of us. You're gonna need to like get with it.
Exactly. And like there's a point at which earlier Kira had said something to Tarisai about like, oh, who are you thinking about? And it's like regarding a word that they were talking about, like riding, some word that could be recontextualized to be sexual. And Tarisai's mind goes to like Sanjeet's muscular back. And it's a very sexual desire moment. It's not like his beautiful eyes as he looked at me. It's about his body. It is about I want to touch it.
Let me get on some of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just really like that because it's something that I think a lot of writers really avoid when they are writing young characters. But as somebody who was all too eager to lose her virginity at age 14 and was on it from then on very hard, let me tell you, that's just the reality. Like, they're horny.
And especially considering the what we've learned so far, even though it's very early, about the council, is just how intimate it's going to be. These 11, 12 people are going to spend their life together.
Yeah.
We know that there is a rule that they're not supposed to sort of like have sex with each other. But we also know that they're absolutely going to be having sex with each other, because one of the priests just told us that, you know, a woman on the council will most likely bear the next Raybearer. So it's acknowledging that these
don't pay attention to the chat. Don't do it.
Are going. I almost did, but I turned away. these young people are about to have like a lifetime together, and these sexual needs and urges and desires are going to come up.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that at least Maya, for one, and she's not the only one, they're just like, yeah, this is part of the fucking deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, get over yourself. Like, you can't like be
Yeah.
uptight about it. Like, that makes no sense. So it tells the reader, oh, I need to get over this.
Yeah, very much.
You know what I mean?
And I follow Jordan Ufueko on Instagram. She's a delightful follow, you guys. She posted something about Neil Gaiman the other day, and I sent it to Rashawn, and we had a nice little chuckle.
That was so good.
But she posted at one point about how she has to constantly remind herself of the age group she's writing for, because she has a tendency to get a little bit hot and heavy with her writing, and she has to edit it back.
Oh.
And I was sort of like, okay, I see that.
That's fun. Ooh.
Patrick commented there was a mention of Theo getting dreams of handsome male suitors too, and I'm not sure if Theo's a guy because that could be a girl's name, but is this our first mention of a gay character? And I did take Theo to be a male character because I just take Theo usually to be a boy's name.
Yeah.
That has been a male name more often than a female name in stuff I've read. But I may be wrong about it.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that they don't, like, now that I'm looking at that sentence, there is no specific pronoun.
No.
Like there are for the rest. Like we know that, let's see, Dreams of Roses for Tarisai from Nantes, Adoring Crowns for Ailing from Moriana. Oh wait, no, we don't know.
Ailing doesn't have any. From Montreal is, I think, how you say that.
Yeah, just the blind weaver boy from Niamba is the only one I think that gets like an actual pronoun that we know he's a boy. But we know that the chick from Berislav is a girl,
mm-hmm.
because it says it wrapped her in wool. Yeah, I like that. I just assumed Theo was a male as well.
Yeah, same. It might not be, but that's how I took it. And this is when she goes and is talking to Dio, and he's looking at the ways he still may be able to die. Stop looking at the chat, Rashawn.
I was, but I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I saw it, but it didn't register. Like, I didn't look at it enough to, like, read the words.
And he says it out loud. And Tarisai is like, why are you saying that shit? Do you want everybody to know how to kill you? And it turns out she is right to be worried, as they're listening at the window for this exact type of information.
Yeah, that absolutely turns back to like bite everybody right in the ass. There's also a wonderful moment too where because he's wondering about, he doesn't really believe in this mask. He doesn't really believe in his immortality. And she says, Oiloye a couple of times, and nothing happens. And then Deo says it, and the little mask lights up, and that's her telling him, see, you are like the one. You know, it means something when you say it. It doesn't mean anything when I say it. And then we find out later on that fucking, is it Wu-En and Kathleen?
Yep.
These motherfuckers.
They're hanging around. Tarisai had been hopeful that since she had failed in her task, her mother had just forgot about her. But evidently she got impatient, and she sent her people to maybe take care of this problem for her.
Yeah, yeah. And this first chapter 8 ends because she has been looking for Sanjeet throughout the whole chapter, like you mentioned, and he has not been around. And he shows up at her pallet after everybody has gone to sleep, and reaches for her hand, and we find out that his ama is dead and that his father has been taken to prison.
Yep.
And we remember, of course, that his father was a real son of a bitch.
Yep.
And
real quick, before we get too far into what's going on with Sanji, I just want to mention this one line that I found compelling with Dio. Because he's like sensing that Tarisai is thinking about running away, because she is low key like, I wish I could just bail. And it says, don't abandon Eretzar. And I can't explain it, Tar, he whispered, but the moment I first saw you, I knew we were linked. We're beans in a pod, you and I. I think it's both of us or neither. My blood ran cold. I didn't understand. They were words a lover would say, but that was not how Dio meant them. And I really appreciate that she can tell the difference, you know? It is like, it feels like the sort of thing like, I knew the moment I saw you. That's normally something very romantic, but that's clearly not what he is meaning by it. And
the fact that she can tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what I think is still a relatively young age.
Yeah.
You know, to have that sort of insight. I didn't have it in my teens.
Mm-hmm.
And she just tells him, she's thinking she doesn't understand any of this.
Yeah.
But she tells him, I promise, fine, I won't go anywhere. Now just fucking go to bed. Stop being silly.
Yep. So, all right, Sanjeet. We find out some more about his family history.
This is all so sad.
This is really, really rough.
This bit about the brother. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we find out that his ama has died, and Tarisai is thinking maybe we can do the thing where we can get her shade to come and say goodbye.
Yeah. And she mentions she's only seen 2 funerals, and one was outside Bikina House, and the other was here at the Children's Palace. And this is really awful.
This is horrible.
One of the Theo, who we still don't get a pronoun even here. Theo is anointed, and there is another candidate from the same region that as soon as Theo is anointed and she is no longer in the running, she just gets up, walks to the Hall of Dreams, and throws herself out a window.
Yep. This is awful.
Yeah.
And we find out, and it's almost as an aside to this, that children come from all over the realm to be candidates, right? And a lot of them don't have a way home.
Yeah.
They don't have anywhere to go back to. They don't have a way to get back. This is it. This is like their life's, you know, everything is culminating in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And when they are not chosen, they don't have anything left.
Yep.
There's nothing. And so, this young woman just throws herself out of a window. And one of the things Tarisai says is that she watches the funeral, and everybody is wailing and crying and, you know, self-flagellating and everything like she had witnessed at Bikini House. It's not Bikini, but Bikina House. But this bit that she sees here at the palace is all ritual and no real emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one is really crying. No one is really mourning. They are just performing this mourning because that is what's necessary to sort of like have the transition, you know? And then she sees later on, is it Mbali? That she witnesses have like a real moment of mourning for this young woman who's thrown herself out the window. And that's when she gets to see the ghosts come.
Yeah. And apparently the shades really don't come always. Like, they most often, it seems like, don't. If they died peacefully, or if they died in, you know, a circumstance where they are at rest now, they aren't going to show. But this girl, obviously, she died in a real distressed state. And Mbali burns the, like, wrapper, I think.
Her sash.
Yeah. That the candidates wear. And the girl shows, and Mbali embraces her. And the girl is, like, crying. Her shade is crying.
Yeah.
And
she says that I'll
is
miss
really...
you.
Yeah. Ugh.
Right. And then she says that, and Valley says, no, you won't, not for long, because where you're going, you know, you won't miss anything where you're going. You're just going to like have peace. And that's all you have to worry about. Oh, it's very sweet.
the fact that she's like solid surprised me. Tarisai mentions like she can hold this little ghost girl, you know?
Yeah.
And just the fact that thinking about, she hasn't got a way to go home. That is awful. But also the fact that at this point it's been 4 years and you're just telling this kid now they got to go.
That's it.
That's a fucking rough thing to do to a kid this age. You know, this has become their home and you're basically turning them out. And they've got to either find their way home or like create a whole new world for themselves. Because like, you know, let's say Sanjeet doesn't get anointed. He decides that he's just not going to do it. And they eventually did anoint somebody else. He's supposed to go home. His dad's arrested. His mother's dead. His brother's God knows where.
Yeah.
What's he going to do?
What's waiting for him out there?
Yep.
Other than those horrible fighting pits.
Exactly.
You know? And you think about, like, we know that there are dozens of children from each realm that show up hoping to be chosen. You know, there's only going to be the 11 chosen out of hundreds of kids.
Yep.
That have all, you know, schlepped from all over this universe to be here for the slim chance of being chosen. When you think about it like that, you think about how many go unpicked that are just like, well, what? I'm going to go back and herd sheep if I can get back home, if I'm lucky, if my family is still where I last saw them.
And you going from, like you pointing out, you're going from living in a literal palace and having everything done for you and being waited on every day to just back to like your regular life.
Yep. Meanwhile, if I understand correctly, the candidates from all their individual families, your family, it's got to be like when your kid, the first generation to go to college, all your eggs are in this basket.
Yeah. You
know, you are your family's hope, like their biggest hope.
Yep.
And then you don't make it.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. I wouldn't be surprised if there were kids out there whose parents were like, if you don't get picked, don't come home. You know,
I wouldn't be surprised either. Like nobody, it doesn't sound like anybody got like bus fared back home in a pocket. They just got dropped off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's her. Like, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I think it's mentioned somewhere that this happens more often than anyone likes to talk about, the fact that children hurt themselves or kill themselves when they're not picked.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like an unspoken kind of cost of doing business, you know?
Yeah, it feels like there should really be a better system like this. And then the fact that the whole thing with breakfast, and when it's mentioned in the previous chapters about how if you sleep further from the door, you get whatever's left of breakfast and you get less time to eat. I was like, really? That's the best y'all could come up with, is just, we're not even going to rotate where people sleep so that some days they're closer than others. They're just out of luck. Like, but that is how the world is, though. We just have systems that make objectively no sense, and we're like, no, but that's how we do it, and that's all.
That's just how we do it. We're not gonna revisit it. Patrick, I'm looking in the chat. I'm gonna get in trouble. Patrick makes an interesting point that the candidates all have hallows, so you would think that maybe that's something they could use for their advantage out in the world. But I wonder if you're so focused on a very particular end goal, it can be difficult to reframe and like start to try to look at like a broader picture, you know? Like maybe if they weren't kids, they might be able to be like, oh, well, I'll just take this gift I got and make it work for me, you know?
If they had some kind of like internship department that was like, you didn't make it as a thing, well, you can do this other thing. But and also, like, some hallows are going to lend themselves more to that than others. Like, what Sanjeet can do, he wants to be a doctor. So, if he were to leave, that's a thing. That's an option. But what does Tarisai do as a career with what she can do? I'm not saying there are no possibilities, but she'd really have to, like, create a whole new thing.
She could be a hell of a hustler. She could have like a brothel. It's all about like giving you your fantasies and charging people for that. I mean, just hook her up with Littlefinger. They make that shit work.
God.
He could monetize the fuck out of that.
I was thinking she could be like a psychologist, and pull memories and stuff,
too.
But I don't know. It seems like that would put her through so much trauma.
Have an OnlyFans.
Its own kind of psychology. So let's see. He has.
When we found out about his brother.
Yeah, he has this anklet, and they are going to try this. It does not work. And they kind of sit in silence for a moment, and then Sanjeet starts talking. I've been planning to kill him all day. I've been trying to find a way to escape on Ilioba, leave the children's palace, and infiltrate Father's prison. Then I realized that's the kind of stunt that would make him proud of me. I hope you never win the pride of a monster, Tarisai. It's worse than their contempt.
Wow. That is quite a line.
Right?
Yeah.
And when they're talking about the Ray, he says, I connected with Dio because I had a younger brother just like him. And my brother could also see weaknesses, but in souls. He knew why people were hurting, and he knew just the right thing to say. But Father thought he was too soft. So he put him in fighting pits. He lost every fight and felt bad for his opponents. And Father sold him as a recruit to desert mercenaries. He was 9.
He was 9.
Yeah.
9. So he has a brother who can understand, like, empathy, you know, on like, 1,000.
Yep.
And his father sells them to these mercenaries, and
Sanjeet admits he came to me to try and run away, and I wouldn't help him because I thought maybe Father was right.
Yeah.
Basically.
He says he was worried that his brother was too kind and too naive and that the world would basically eat him alive. So he agreed that his father was right, that this young boy needed to be toughened up.
Yep.
Because that's what we do to young men and to boys. We don't allow any softness in them. We call it weakness.
Yep.
We don't allow them to be empathetic. So, and then the most horrific part of this is when he mentions that the brother comes home just a year later and he's already so changed.
Yeah.
He
used to cry when Father beat Amma. Now he just watched. Like he respected Father for it. And instead of using his hallow to comfort, now he used it to destroy. He never lied, Sendil, not ever. He didn't need to. He could look at a stranger on the street and know the exact combination of words to reduce him to tears. Even Father was scared of him. So he returned Sendil to the mercenaries. And soon after, Amma sent me away here. I never saw my brother again. Fucking
that is
devastating.
So, that's like, it's not a lot, right? That's like 2 short paragraphs. And it just rips your fucking heart out. It is, yeah.
This reminds me of The Wire and that kid that gets caught up in everything, and everything the cops try to do to help isn't enough. And I can't remember the kid's name. It's not Wallace. We know what happens with Wallace.
You're talking about the kid that sold all the candy and the potato chips and stuff,
yeah.
Right?
And eventually in season 4, he is just rough and hard.
Oh, wait, no. We're talking about somebody different.
Is it? I thought it was the same kid.
the kid that sold everything, and his story ends up, he's like in a group home because he was in a foster home, and then he ends up in a group home, and he's getting like beat up all the time. Then there's Mike, who's the one who has a little brother, and he ends up being real hard and ends up becoming like a hitman.
I think maybe that's who I'm thinking of. Maybe
Mike
that
ends
is
up
it.
with Snoop, the girl, and then the West Indian guy whose name I can't remember.
All I
anyway.
remember is that it was a kid that, like, if anybody had stepped in the right way at the right time, none of the things would have happened the way they did, and he would have been okay. But everybody failed him. And it was like the system is set up to fail him. So that there was no real, even though it would have been so easy to avoid the ending that we got with him, there was also almost no other possible way it could have gone. Do you get what I'm saying? Are you reading the chat, Rashawn?
Nope, I am not.
But yeah, it's just like this is what makes me so crazy about thinking of the way the world is and how little it would take to fix things in so many different directions. It would just, it blows my mind that the resources that some people have available to them and they choose not to do anything with them, when the smallest gesture could literally change the course of multiple lives. And I know that I have a bit of a syndrome of like wanting to help everybody and taking too much of that on mentally, but also I feel a responsibility as a person in the world to the welfare of other human beings, because I just feel like that's the responsible way to exist. And the fact that there are people out there who don't feel that obligation.
There's a lot of people that don't feel that obligation.
I don't understand
There's a lot of people that think that obligation is like a weakness, that it's being like a patsy. You know, you're a sucker.
Yep. A chump.
A chump of the highest order, that you could be concerned with someone else's well-being. Like, why would you care about that? Why would you give a fuck? When he talks about what his brother can do and how his brother can hurt people without like putting his hands on them, right? Which is very different than what Sanjeet can do. Because Sanjeet can see the weaknesses, but then he has to like physically assault them.
Yeah.
Right. Where his brother can just say one or two things and just completely destroy you. And I think it's really interesting that when you think about the two boys, like who would you be most intimidated by, right? I would think it would be Sanjeet. But we find out that the father is afraid of the brother.
Yeah.
In a way that he's never been afraid of Sanjeet.
Yeah.
Right? I just think that's really interesting.
Yeah, he knows that his dog isn't going to attack him. No offense, Sanjeet, but that's like the mentality he's got, you know? But it's a different thing when somebody can psychologically eviscerate you, because that's like, especially a man like his father is going to have a lot of those types of weaknesses. You don't just lash out at everybody and abuse your wife and your children if you don't have a whole lot of fucking wrong things going on in your soul. Right.
And then your son can take one look at you and see everything that's wrong with you.
Yep.
No wonder he wanted to get him out the fucking house. So
right.
All right. So he tells Tarisai about all of this, and
he starts to be like, we should get anointed. They wind up interrupted here.
She says, she tells him that you can be more than the prince's bear. She reminds him that you can use your hallow to keep people alive. There's a little bit of a talk about CPR here, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Apparently he came up with that. But, you know, she's telling him that this gift of his that that Sanjeet seems to think of as just like not a curse, but doesn't think it has any real value. It only hurts people. And she's, telling him that this doesn't have to be his future. He can do all these other things with it. And then they get interrupted, like you said, with this unscheduled trial. And everybody gets ushered out. And it turns out that this is all a ruse.
Yep.
It is Kathleen and Wu In are here.
Kathleen takes on the appearance of like one of the test makers. So when she tells them unscheduled tests, they believe her. And Wu In is here with this
later.
Oh my God.
I had to take on the face of that boring lady, whoever the fuck it is.
Kathleen just throws shade left and right.
It really was uncalled for.
She does not give a shit. She is just like, literally everybody sucks so hard. And it's extremely unbearable to me to have to be amongst you. It's a trial every day.
Is traveling with like this giant leopard that Kathleen is also irritated about because she had to like, make it look like a regular house cat. And she's just disgusted that was the thing she had to do. And that this guy is traveling with this weird beast that shouldn't even be a thing because apparently it is from when he was traveling the underworld, and because he didn't die, he brought it back with him.
Yeah.
And Kathleen is just like really, really put out about the whole thing.
This is so weird. Am sends spirit beasts to comfort redemptors in their last moments of life, but I refused to die, and when I escaped, Young came with me. Okay. I guess.
Like, meanwhile, she's like, it was a pain throwing a glamour around something that big. But Wu In insisted. So they're here, and we find out that they have been around all these years. They have been keeping tabs, and they're not impressed with her progress.
They sure aren't.
They really don't. They think that she's shirking her duties, that she should have been killed. What is the holdup, please? Someone tell me.
And Tarisai is like, you guys didn't give me any info. And they're like, yeah, that was kind of the point.
Right? Sort of on purpose. First of all, and that in Valley chick, her whole jam is telling when someone's telling the truth. So we had to keep you as ignorant as possible so that you could fly under the radar, which we kind of already knew that as well. And they are just like, the lady would like to know what the fuck the holdup is.
Yep.
And she says, Tarisai says, well, the Ray isn't working on me.
Yeah.
And I can't hurt him until, I'm anointed. So what can you do?
And then she says, I'm glad. She admits that she doesn't really want to do it, which I was like, oh, word? You're just going to tell him?
She just put it out there.
Yeah.
Just put it all out. She really did. She just put it all out there.
And she's like, why do you guys even want to hurt him? And Win says it's not what he has done, but what he will do. The Kunleo emperors have the power to change the Redemptor Treaty. They can make it fair so Redemptors are born everywhere instead of only in Songland.
Yeah.
And
we find out here that Tarisai is just like, I don't, that didn't sound right.
Mm-hmm.
He's never said such a thing. And Wu In is just like, well, I don't know about all that, but the lady does know. And I trust that she's telling me the truth. Mm-hmm. And then as a reader, I was like, oh shit, what if it's not the truth? Because I had took it as the truth when we first met Wu In earlier, and he tells a story about all the Redemptors coming from Songland and how the lady is going to like make that more fair. Mm-hmm. I was like, that is all the gospel truth. Based on what, Rashawn? Based on what?
I mean, there's also the possibility that Dio doesn't find out that treaty is changeable until he is actually emperor.
Like, he's a child. I'm sure that there's so much that he doesn't know. Mm-hmm. Right? But Wu In at this point is like all in with the lady. He is not going to like have somebody talk him out of his allegiance at this point, Mm-hmm. So he just says, she promised to save the children. I trust her. She says she's going to do it. If I do my part, she's going to do what she says, and I'm in it to win it. That's all there is about that. And he says, her patience is wearing thin. And by the way, so is mine.
Yeah.
And that's when we find out that Wu-In has decided to sort of instigate the demise of Dio.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out that he was lurking around the window and he knows the weaknesses that are left.
Yeah.
The things that can kill him. And he knows about the burning. And so now there's a fucking fire.
This is very interesting to me because I would love to know if he succeeded here and Dio did indeed die, would Tarisai no longer have a wish in her? Would that absolve her and free her? Because the wish was made and then it's put out of her control to fulfill it.
Right. I had a question as well. It's a little bit different. My question was, I don't think the lady would approve of Wu-In taking this action because she has a very specific plan that she worked really hard on.
Okay.
And he is just, Wu-In is taking it, taking liberties, it feels like.
Yeah,
Even though he thinks he's trying, like, accomplishing her goal. But the lady has a very well thought out plan, at least as far as she's concerned.
Right.
She's put a lot of energy into.
Mm-hmm.
And this person, Wu-In, who is not to, sort of set a hierarchy that maybe doesn't exist, but it feels to me like Wu-In is not necessarily an equal with the lady.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit of a
Subordinate.
A little bit of a subordinate, just a tad,
Mm-hmm.
And here he comes, deciding to do what he wants to do because he thinks it, furthers her plan without her permission. And to your point, if he does that, what does that make of Tarisai? Like, if she's not the wish, what is she? She's not human, right? She's not. Doesn't
She's
seem like she's
partially human.
But I don't know.
Same.
If her whole purpose is to fulfill her mother's wish and someone takes that out of the equation, what does that leave?
It's a good question.
I don't know, guys. I really don't know the answer.
So, long story short, Tarisai has to fight her way into the palace because everyone is assuming Dio has evacuated because his sleeping pallet is empty. But she knows that he wasn't sleeping. And so he is trapped in this area and she's trying to get to him. And finally, she feels this like piercing pain and can hear his voice.
Help me. Clear as a copper bell, it says.
Yep. Did the ray work? Can you hear me? I'm coming, I thought fiercely. Where are you? And this is you won't die, Dio. It's so far. I can't do it, Tar. I don't believe the priests. I don't believe my mask. I don't believe in my ray. I can't do it.
Because she's trying to tell him, just jump out the fucking window, dude.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to die. It's going to be fine.
Yep.
And it's also a bit where he says, I tried to get out, but a man stood in the way, but I couldn't see his face.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to come back. But, so she decides to run into the fire and remembers her childhood of not getting hurt.
Yeah.
And is also thinking to herself, what the fuck am I doing right now? And I think there's a bit where she actually gets so scared she like turns around and goes the other way, like gives up. And then stops and like comes back to go get him.
And she's thinking about the fact that, like, yeah, I didn't burn a Pekina house, but that house was enchanted, and I'm not totally positive that still applies to me out here in the big wide world. And she also is thinking about the fact that, like, normally if somebody burns to death, they get knocked out by the smoke they inhale before they get burned up, and he has immunity to that type of death.
Yep.
So
to
he will be
suffocation
fully fucking awake as he is burned,
burns to death.
which
and I
really
think
is
that's
cruel.
Yeah.
Ugh. Hate that.
So she goes back, she grabs him, and she's trying to tell him again that he has to jump. And he says he can't because he's afraid. But then he says, I can't do it because then you'll be left alone. And I can't just leave you here, in this fucking burning palace alone. Which, you guys.
I know. I love him so much.
So then she is just like, all right, you know what? I got it. I'll just carry you. And he's like, the fuck? And she's like, no, I got it. I don't burn. I won't burn. And she tells him, I can walk through fire. I'm not normal. I'm not natural or safe or good, but I can protect you. And she holds out her hand, and then she thinks to herself, I can choose. I can write my own story. And then she says, all you have to do is trust me. Y'all.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. I am not natural or safe or good, but I can protect you. That really got to me.
Yeah,
that really got to me.
Those were just not the words I was expecting her to say.
It doesn't feel like this is a moment of like great heroism, and you kind of like are primed for something, really noble.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, I mean, it is in its own way, but it's not like what you think you're going to get.
Yeah.
And then they just fucking go through the fire, and he's screaming, but she takes the brunt of it. And they make it to the other side. And then it's just like mayhem. People are rushing in to separate them, to heal him. Deo starts to heal like almost immediately. Which I wasn't really 100% sure about. Like, why does he start to heal so quickly?
Isn't Kira singing over him?
Oh, yeah. Kira and Sanjeet. Yeah. Kira starts to sing. That's what it is. And she heals him. Okay.
So this is when he's like, all right, well, as soon as they're out of the flames. So about that Ray.
Time. He is on one knee.
Yep.
He's basically proposing. Mm-hmm. He's got the vial out.
And she's freaking
his clothes
out.
Is still singed on the edges.
Smoking. Literally still smoking, sitting there. Servants coming out trying to bat the embers out of his hair. Not now.
Yeah, he is about trying to make this shit official.
And this is when she starts to trigger her memory burn.
Yeah. He says, do you love me now? And she doesn't answer. Like, she just says his name. And he's like, look, you connected with the Ray. You passed the test this time. You heard me. You saved me. No more of your bullshit excuses is basically the energy he's Do you accept my hand? And this is when she, like you said, goes into her, I don't even know what to call this. What do you call this?
A fugue state, kind of?
And she just goes through all the shit that's in her brain, and it's just like, yeah, we're getting rid of all this.
Yeah. And as she's doing it, Melu shows up. And he is like, you are not going to pull this off. This is going to be really bad. You like what you are, half Eru. Your destiny is tied with this. And she's just like, fuck off. And she burns the memory of him out as well.
He doesn't, it really feels like he doesn't think that she can pull this off.
Yeah, very much so.
And she is like, watch. Watch me work. Mm-hmm. And that happens, and you feel like, oh, well, that's got to be it, right? Like, that's the big thing she's got to confront. But it turns out it's not, because then the lady is there. And she is like, oh, you think you bad? All right. and tells her to give up. Your mind protects me with the same ferocity with which it defends your own name. Like, to kill me is to kill yourself, right? Is what she's saying. Which is really scary, I would think, because there feels like there's some real truth to that. I mean, for me, for all of us, for her. And the fear of, like, what if that's real? What if I destroy her and then there's nothing left? Like, there's no me left.
Yeah.
Like, what a fucking leap of faith that is. What a fucking courageous thing to be like, yeah, no, I will still be here when you're gone. I exist separate from you. I am not just of you, which is what you've been telling me her whole life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're, what is it, made of mine?
Made of me.
Like, you've been telling me that my whole life. If I destroy you, then there's no me left.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, nah, watch.
Yep. She is just like, well, I actually have a name. And I like the fact that the name isn't something that the lady gave her. The name is the name Melu gave her. So it's unconnected. And it makes sense. Like I had mentioned earlier how I didn't really clock the fact that the lady doesn't ever call her by that name and says the Eru calls her something different.
Yep.
So the fact that she can use that name to separate herself out makes a lot of sense because the lady has no connection to it at all.
Yep.
So
it made me feel a little bad that she got rid of Melu too. I was like, but he gave you that name now.
He gave her the name, but he's also the one trying to tell her to give in and just go ahead and do it.
Yeah. And the way it's described, it just says, and at last the shield of adamant shattered. Gone was the glow of her brilliant black eyes. Gone was the jasmine scent of her arms around me. Gone was the music of her throaty voice, the chant of me and mine. Just gone.
Mm-hmm.
What must that be like?
So he anoints her. And I froze. Something bad was supposed to happen now. Something horrible. I couldn't remember. But nothing did.
Nope.
Dio stood and pulled me up into an embrace, and I shivered with relief. And then Sanjeet gets anointed. And everybody bows to the two of them, and she says they shouldn't be bowing. And he says, of course they should, anointed honor. And that is the end of part 1.
I almost read right to the next chapter, but there's this nice break that says part 2, and I was like, let me text.
Mm-hmm. You better. For reference, everybody, next episode is going to be covering chapters 10 through 13. So we've got 10, 11, 12, and 13. We have 4 chapters next time.
What happened to my sticky note that fast?
While Rashawn figures out her sticky note situation, I am going to move over to saying hi to new patrons real quick because y'all know I love you, and I gotta let you know. Ow, fuck! I was swinging my arm around, and I fucking just punched my laundry basket sitting right here. Oh, that shit hurt so bad. Oh my god. Anyway, so new patrons. We've got Neil Trickle, Jasmine, Casey.
Welcome.
Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for becoming patrons. Appreciate y'all so much. I have decided that I'm going to be doing 2 postcards at the same time for this month since I've had fallen so far behind. So, do you know, I finally got those postcards in the mail, and then I had to get the printout labels to mail them and the stamps. But we had the ice storm, And so like the day after they arrived, everything shut down for like 2 days and I couldn't go and get anything. Finally, yesterday, I go and I get the stuff, but there was also all of these groceries I'm dealing with. I leave the stamps and labels in the car and I'm like, I'll come back and get them. I forgot. And then this morning, I'm planning to sit down and do them before we record. And Owen took the car today instead of the van. His fucking work van is sitting there. I'm like, God damn it. So I had texted him and I'm like, can you bring that stuff back? And he's like, yeah. Bitch doesn't come back until like 4:30 with that stuff. So yeah, it feels like the entire universe has just conspired to fuck them up. I don't know what I did. Maybe God wants a postcard and is feeling a way about the fact that I didn't send one on up there. But it just has been a bit of a fucking making a real meal out of this one. So anyway, just letting you guys know that the next time I post about what the postcard's going to be, you're going to see 2 different designs because I'm just going to go ahead and knock that shit out together.
Go ahead. Just get
may
one
as
out
well,
there.
you know, because I'm just, what the hell?
Well, now's a good time to become a patron. You guys join just in time.
Indeed. And also want to mention that Rashawn and I recorded on The Circle season 5. Super fun to talk about. That'll be posting up shortly. And also that I made the event for the next Unsober, which will be about Facebook Market. And I'm pretty excited to talk about it. Have you done any more shopping on there?
No, I've never bought anything. I
were
look
looking
at
at
it
chairs.
But I've never yet. Well, remember, I have a whole situation. Like, I don't have a car, and I get a truck, and I borrow somebody's SUV, and it's all done. You know, I'm already exhausted. I said like 2 sentences. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's the one nice thing is that Owen has the work van, and it's quite big. So I can just be like, oh, go get this thing. And he's like, okay.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, my father-in-law doesn't do anything all day. Like, he loves an errand. My father-in-law loves an errand. But, like, lifting it into the thing and then lifting it out and then getting it again, like I'm on the 3rd floor. Mm-hmm. That's the sort of thing that keeps us from really, really taking it.
You guys got to get one of those like New York pulley systems where you have the piano outside the window.
Listen, I found some very distressing news about the balcony next in the building next to me that I'm not even going to talk about.
What?
My mom fucking walked by the building next to us and she was like, the pillars look like they're like rotting. She was like, they have like some kind of like tin or something wrapped around it, like there's termites or something. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, the pillars that hold up the balcony. And I'm like, why would you tell me that?
Okay.
I don't want to know that.
I am going to hazard a guess that there are metal girders or something inside there. Like that can't be what holds them.
It's not just wood,
right? Yeah, you know.
So I'm sure it's all fine and will be handled and it's not all going to collapse. However, my brain is not interested in any of your logic.
Honestly, same. Also, by the time we record that one, I'm working on a pretty big like redesign of our living room at the moment using a lot of stuff from our wedding decor. And I have a whole thing that I'm going to work on this Sunday. I'm hoping that I get it done and that way I can show pictures. It'll be hard to share. I'll figure out a way in the crowdcast. But yeah, that's available to super spoiled patrons, $20 and up. We do the twice a month live recording that also gets posted as a podcast. And everybody can come hang out in the chat and talk with us. And it's always just some like sort of random topic that catches our fancy. Mm-hmm. We haven't decided on another topic for the second one of the month. I don't remember what we wound up like, if there's anything that you thought of that we didn't touch on. I know I have a
whole list going somewhere.
This list has such weird shit on it. I know that we did an episode about topics and I kind of just added whatever everybody said in that episode, and it is coming back to bite me that I just added whatever, because some of it I'm just like, what?
I mean, it was just like, you know, stuff to think about. We weren't like married to all the ideas. It was just like, you know, starting ground.
I do like that we have one on here that's just scams, and that probably would be a good one. Maybe we should have that one.
You were listening to Scam Goddess pretty hardcore.
Oh, I'm still.
Yeah.
That show is so great. So yeah, maybe I'll bring up some scams and we can talk about things, our own scams we've tried to pull.
Listen, I want like scams that I should be trying, because this fucking working 40 whatever hours for like nonsense is no way to live.
Peanuts.
So give me your best scams to get out of poverty. That's what I'm interested in.
All right, so the topic will be get rich quick schemes.
There you go.
The topic will be multi-level marketing.
It's not a pyramid. It's more of like an oblong shape.
It's a dodecahedron. And also I want to mention, I had said that Rashawn was going to be taking some time off near her birthday, and I said that it would be a different week. We decided that we won't be recording on the Friday before. So no recording 17th of February, Friday. And that means that there will not be an episode going up the following Thursday, the 23rd, or the 21st if you are a patron. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that change, because she's going to be going out of town. So she needs a little bit of extra wiggle room.
Yes, thank you very much.
I'm really I'm excited for her to have some time off, have a little birthday fun.
I am so excited. I hope that it pans out.
All right, guys. Thank you all again so much for hanging out with us. We love you very much.
We do.
Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
Yay!
Yay! His halo is literally pointing out your feminine hips, and it's super effective.
Have you seen that John Mulaney bit?
I haven't, but that's very funny.
Oh my God, he's talking about how tweens will like eviscerate you on the street, and he says they'll make fun of you, but in like an accurate way. They will zero in on the thing you don't like about you. So you'll be walking by and they'll go, ha 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 ha, look at that high-waisted man. He's got feminine hips. No, that's the thing I'm sensitive about.
Oh, that's really funny.
He's very funny. It's a shame that he kind of seems like maybe he's not such a great guy.
Yeah, those little bits and pieces that have been coming out lately, not great.
But God,
Not
he is
great.
like, some of his comedy is
fucking-
gold.
Just stand up. They're all trash. They all end up being trash eventually.
It is really tiring, man.
Yeah.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.